Narayanaaya. Om Namo Narayanaaya. Om Namo Narayanaaya. Dear devotees of Chicago Kali Bari, today is Sunday, and a continuing series of lectures on astronomy and astrology, and although the calculation of the Indian Panchakam and related subjects. Mr. Sriram Ramanujam from Virginia and his daughter will be presenting today the continuing lecture. With that, I'll hand over to Mr. Sriram. Thank you.
Jai Narayana, thank you so much for tuning in. Today, we are going to be covering an important topic, which is going to be Sankalpam. When we do Sankalpam for anything that we undertake in terms of any religious ritual, I shouldn't really be calling a ritual, because that's something that we need to do. So it's really a way of life, right? When we do something that's a way of life, like brushing teeth, we really don't call it a ritual. It's really something that we do that is good for us. So that's exactly what we do with our havan or anything that we do as a karma, right? The English word of it is ritual, meaning somebody's forcing it upon you. This is really not a forcing it upon you. This is like something that we need to be born with. As we are born on this earth, we are just paying back what we really can to everything that's around us that has made it possible for us to lead a very nice life. That's exactly what it is when we try to do our nitya karmas, right? Anything that's a nitya karma, that is like chaula karma, to your simantanam, to marriage, vivaham, upanayanam, or anything that we do is really a karma that we undertake. When we do that, right, we start off with going all the way from praying to the either Narayana or Shiva or whoever it might be. What we do is we center ourselves and say, hey, where are we today? What is it that we are trying to do? That's really what Sankalpam is. We really talked about Sankalpam in terms of the creation. The creation is what Sankalpam is. So when we talked about the creation, the creator, right, when he takes Sankalpam, that kalpa starts, right? When he does Sankalpam, the kalpa, the creation begins. But when we do Sankalpam for smaller things that we undertake and that we are able to do. Now, when we talk about the subject of, our own Sankalpam, the Sankalpam that we do involves everything, right? Where are we? I'll cut some of the items, but I'm going to read off of what we have, right? We say, Agni Pravartamanasya Brahmana Dvitiya Pararte, right? We start with Brahmana Dvitiya Pararte. So Dvitiya Pararte is really where we are with respect to Brahma's creation. So Brahma is supposed to have 100 years of life. But 100 years is in relation to our own life. It's amounts to millions of years. Millions of years in Satyaloka, is 100 years in Satyaloka. It translates to millions of years where we are. We're going to show you the lokas, and that will give you an expanse of how the world grows up when it is so far away. Right? We know that Swarga has a different calculation in terms of the days and nights. Satyaloka, which is far, far away from even Swarga, right, has its own calculation of what a day is in its own realm. So when we talk about that, this Brahma is supposed to have been the time that we are in. Our rishis have calculated and told us it is in the second half, right? Meaning we have crossed the 50 years of Brahma. So that's the Dvitiya Pararte. And then we have where we are in that creation is Shweta Varaha Kalpe. So Shweta Varaha Kalpe is really during the creation, right? Or during the time of the creation of this world, when Sriman Narayana really wanted to make this earth a livable space where people could live and really get rid of their karmas. So why are we born? We are here, we are born on this earth so that we can do our karmas, get rid of our karmas, and then we can move on to the next level, right? We can either move up or move down. It's totally our choice. So that's what people will say. So we need to understand that there's a level up and there's a level down, but going up is always the what is preferred, even though it's not a bad thing. You're not saying this up or down is bad, so to speak. I'll tell you that much, because Bali Chakravarti, for example, he moved down, but that world that he lives in is supposed to be much, much, much better than even Swarga. But he is the ruler of the lower realms, and Vishnu helps him there also. So it's not the bad, but if you want to raise up, it's always better to go up in the world. So we are in this phase of Shweta Varaha Kalpe. So Shweta Varaha is the Perumal that helped. Anita, do you want to kind of explain how or what we mean by Shweta Varaha Kalpe? Why does this Shweta Varaha come here, in this whole equation?
Right. So if you take a look at this chart of the lokas, where I've put the sun here, we're in Bhuloka, in this pie of this hourglass-shaped tier of all the worlds. In one of the Rakshasas called Hiranyaksha, he makes it so that the gravitational force downward on the earth pulls it all the way down to Rasatala Lokam. So instead of being in Bhulokam where things are habitable for people like us, Earth is now not in cosmic oceans in Earth itself per se. It's in some ocean or space down here in Rasatala Lokam. What Perumal does is he takes avataram as a Shweta Varaha, a boar, a white boar, and he brings Bhumi back to Bhulokam so that we can all habit the place. And
so when we talk about Bhulokam, I want to feed off of what you kind of said, right? Bhulokam is the place. Of course, every other lokam also has their own sun, but the placing of the earth or a planet, in a certain position which is absolutely effective in life form, in having water in the water form, ice in its ice form, things of that nature, right, is very important. And that's the reason why Perumal had to put it in a certain place in order to make it habitable for people. There are other life forms, even Mars has its own life form, but just that we cannot see it. But that's not what our scriptures consider as you need to be born in order to get rid of your karmas. So the Bhulokam is a place, and it's a place where Bhumi Devi was intended to have her orbit, but it falls out of place, like Anvita just said, right? It goes out of orbit, it falls all the way down to Rasatalam, and that's where Perumal had to come intervene and then pull it back all the way up. It's not a cosmic ocean. There's no water there. That's why when you see of certain pictures of Bhumi Devi, you see that she's shivering. She's shivering because she doesn't have the sunlight, enough of the sunlight, in order to make her be in a habitable form. That's why we bring up the Shvetavaraha Kalpe. That's a mishap that happened during the creation that Brahma did. Shvetavarahan had to come and again intervene, and that's why that Shvetavaraha Kalpe comes into picture here. Again, the next thing that we repeat is Vaivaswata Manvantari. So the creation that we go through is divided into 14 Manvantaras. Before the next Pralaya happens that we talked about. So we are on the 14th, we are on the 7th Manvantara, and we are in the Kali Yuga, right? In the Kali Yugam right now, as most of you know, right? There are 3 yugas that we've already passed, and we are the last yuga before a small Pralaya that happens. Of course, they go to Jambudvipa and Bharatakarshe, or whatever, wherever you are in terms of the geographical positioning. So if you look at how our rishis envision the whole Sankalpam, they come all the way from positioning yourself to the outer space. Where are we with respect to the outer space, right? And then come back and say, okay, in this part of the earth, this is where I live. And now comes the important part of all the things that we have been talking about, which is, which year are we, right? Right now, we are in Plava Nama Samvatsara. So one of the things that we do as Indian scriptures go, everything that we talk about has a personification. The day of the week is a personification. The year itself is a personification. We have 60 years. Plava happens to be one of them. We go cyclically for 60 years, and it's a devata. Plava is also a devata. Now, we are in that particular year, and then we are in Uttarayanam. Uttarayanam again is a devata. Uttarayanam and Dakshinayana are two devatas actually that guard the entrances of the sun's of the movement of the earth around the sun. But still, if we call it the movement of the sun because it's respect to us, right? It is what the sun is going to show us in terms of Uttarayanam and Dakshinayanam. So that's where on the Varsha Rutu or Vasanta Rutu that we are in right now is also another devata. So in the 33,000 crore devatas that you hear, Mukoti devatas, right? All of these devatas play a role and they guard us. So by paying respects to each one of them, by saying we are in Uttarayana Punya Kale, we are in Vasanta Rutu, we are in Mesha Masa, for example. Mesha is again a devata, right? The devata is the one that guards or makes sure. If you look at the way that our earth is, the Mesha is, right? Mesha has a certain set of nakshatras that he has, and Mesha, because the sun is in a certain position, the heat and the livability, right? The spring form that Mesha brings is important. Mesha, if you look at the how it's organized, it's supposed to be a head of the an animal. This is the head of the animal. That's where it starts. Life starts in Mesha. So that's why we have importance to Mesha as being the start of the year also. Mesha again is the devata, and then after the Mesha, we talk about Krishna Paksha, for example, right? We talk about the Masam. We just said of the Mesh Masam, and in the Masam, what do? We have the Paksha. The Paksha is again the when the earth, the moon revolves around us, right? It changes the Paksha. The first 15 days, the fortnight that we talked about. One is Krishna Paksha, where it's it's going to go into Amavasya. When you're in Shukla Paksha, you're going to come into Paurnami. For example, tomorrow is Chitra Paurnami. It's a very important Paurnami Masa. So the full moon is an important one for us. Tomorrow it will be Chitra Nakshatram. Wherein we have talked about this earlier also. But when tomorrow, if you look at it, the moon's going to be the full moon, and we are going to be in Chitra Nakshatram. It's going to point out to. Sorry. I'm just going to point to Chitra Nakshatram tomorrow, right? Today is Hasta, actually speaking. So it's going to be Chitra Nakshatram tomorrow. So that's where the moon is going to be pointing out to. So that's how that particular Paksha, the Krishna Paksha itself is a Devata. Right? And then it's going to be Paurnami tomorrow. Today is Chaturdasi. So that again, every day, actually every Tithi is a Devata. So, for example, Pratama, we do certain things. Dvitiya, most of the time we start our prayers or our, studies. Everything that we want to start to do, we usually do it on a Dvitiya. So there are devatas for Tritiya, Chaturthi again, right? Like, Ganesha was born, so it got personified. Sashti is for Subramanya, for example. Subramanya was born on a Shashti because I told you about the Kritikas that they were. And again, Kritikas are guarded by Agni Devata. So there's a hierarchy again that I want to kind of bring in. So everything has a relation to higher Devatas from how you go. So Sashti again works with Kritikas, and so Shashti has its own, is a Devata by himself. So Sashti is a Tithi. And then you talk about the Nakshatra, like we talked about Chitra. Chitra, of course, is yet another Devata, right? Nakshatra Devatas. We have things in 27. We have, it comes in Vedas again. And we talk about the Vasara. The Vasara today, for example, Bhanu Vasara, right? Bhanu Vasara is Sunday. And then it's named really after sun. According to our Indian calendar, the start of the week is not Monday. It's the start of the week is Sunday, because sun as Banu is the primary planetary devata. Among the grihas, among the 9 planets, grihas, the navagrahas, truly, sun, Surya, Bhagavan, happens to be the primary devata. So the day that is dedicated to him, which is Bhanuvasara, is really the start of the week. So we pay respects to him when we say things. So for us, even a point in space is actually an important aspect. We respect that. For example, Uttarayana or Dakshinayana may be point in space when as we enter or leave this space, but it is of primary importance. That's why when we enter Mesha, for example, right, this it's actually the earth that is entering Mesha in this masam, right? We are of course in between right there right now, because you see the sun here, earth here, we are at this position, but we through the sun we are looking at Mesha. Now that's the reason why people do tarpana or pay respects to their pitrus on the day when we enter Mesha. So the entry point of our earth around the sun, everywhere in the space is accounted for, and we pay respects to. So that's why you do tarpana on this day, because a month, right, is supposed to be 1 day in Pitruloka. So Pitru Devatas that plan our, and your progeny are supposed to be gratified by people doing tarpana when this junction happens. That's why people do tarpana during that point. So again, when you talk about the moon again, I want to touch upon briefly about Rahu and Ketu. So Rahu and Ketu are also devatas. Truly speaking, that they were asuras, but as you know, when the churning of the ocean was happening for the Amritam, so they skipped the line, they beat the line, and they got in and stood in line to get the Amritam, and they took the Amritam. So when they took the Amritam, it was the sun and the moon, Surya and Chandra, the 2 devatas that they were, right? I've told you that it is different than the energy sources that they are. Right? The sun and the moon were there. They tattle on this guy, Bhanujit, that he tried to Swarbhanu, right? He was called Swarbhanu back then. And then they say, hey, he stood in the line and he was an asura, but he gets the Amritam. So that's when Vishnu takes an avataram, which is called Rahu Jit. So like there are not just 10 avatarams of Vishnu. That's another thing that we need to remember. There are actually 39 to 40 avatarams according to Pancharatram. Sattvika Samhita gives you 39. In that, Rahu Jit is one of them. He immediately comes in for just a few minutes. He cuts this head off of this Swarbhanu. He gets into 2 pieces. So the head is called Rahu, the tail is called the Ketu. That's why when you saw, they talk about Rahu and Ketu, it's about the head and the tail. Even they deserve a space now, because they become devatas, because they've got Amritam. So they ask for their share, and they do get it. So in order to take revenge, they also say, hey, you know what? I am now, I've got my Amritam. I'm forever going to be alive. You need to respect me. And true to that, right? Our law says we'll respect you. So Vishnu says we'll respect you. We'll respect you guys, and you get a job now. Your job. What do you want? What do you want to be? Right? They say I want to be the one that obstructs the sun from giving light at some point in time. I want to obstruct the moon from giving light at some point in time to Earth. So that's their job. That's what they ask. They were crazy, but still, right? People can ask whatever, but that's what they did, and that's what becomes Rahu and Ketu. So what do you think Rahu is? Rahu is when, truly speaking, when the moon, for example, right? They're not all in the same plane. I've tried to show this like this, but the moon is not really in the same plane as the Earth and the sun. Right, when the moon at some point here gets into the same plane between these 3, that's when we have what is called an eclipse, grahanam. When you have a grahanam, what is a grahanam? Grahanam is getting something, it eats it away, right? What does it eat? It eats the light from the sun. So when you have an Amavasya, always, right? When you have a solar eclipse, the solar eclipse always happens on an Amavasya. Why? Is that's because the moon is going to be here. So when the moon is at the 0 degrees between the sun and the earth, that's when the solar eclipse can happen. So you're eclipsing the rays of solar from falling on the earth, and that's the job of Rahu. So Rahu is always in between here. On the other hand, Ketu, for example, Ketu, the Chandra Grahana that we always know of, always will happen on a Purnami. So the Purnami is when Chandra Grahana happens. When they get into the same plane, as you all know, the shadow of the earth falls on the moon, and you don't see the moon's light, right? And it's eaten up the light. So the Ketu, that's the point in space that's here, is what's called Ketu. So again, Rahu and Ketu are 2 points in space, yet they form one of the Navagrahas. That's the reason why I'm trying to tell you this, is because the 7 planets that we know of, other than Uranus and Pluto, right? The 7 planets, Neptune. So the 7 planets that we know of, that includes the sun, the moon, and the important planets of Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Right? Those are the 5 planets that we consider in 2 addition planets that for us are not planets, or grahas, so to speak, or sun and the moon, because they play an important role. We can talk about how important of a role they play at a later lecture. But in a gist, today's, to recapping what we wanted to try to convey today is all the impacts of the devatas that there are, even if it's a point in space like Rahu or Ketu. Even better story for Rahu and Ketu, truly speaking, is these 7 planets have a day. These 7 planets have a day because seven days of the week, right? They have a day dedicated to each of them, right? Like Monday, for example, Indu Vasara. So it's dedicated to moon. Like I told you, right? The sun is the most important. That is today, Banu Vasara. The next day is dedicated to the most important person, right? Moon. So that's why it's Indu Vasara. Now, Rahu and Ketu, though, right? As one person, Rahu, they have a time allocated every day of the seven days of the week. That's what's called Rahu Kalam. So when you say a Rahu Kalam, right, they not only wanted to be in the picture, trying to eat away the sunlight, but they also wanted to influence people's lives every single day of the week. And based on where we are in terms of our sunrise and sunset, starting on Monday, right, it starts. So they said, because of the moon, right? They said, okay, I'm going to start from the moon, Hindu Vasaraha. So if you look at it, Rahu Kalam, it will start early in the morning for an hour and a half. And as the week progresses, it slowly shifts to the evening. Like, for example, Sunday, it's going to be usually like 4:45 to the 6-ish. Or as our days get longer, it may go into the 6 to 7-ish. Because from sunset until sunset, right, they try to be in the picture in trying to influence human behavior. That's the role that Rahu Kalam plays. So Rahu Kalam plays an important role because we don't want to do things because those guys are not as good. They want to kind of, they're asuras, right, by nature. So they don't want to try to be good. So we need to just respect them and stay away from them. We cannot always fight every single battle. We need to stay away from some of them. And Rahu is one of them. Rahu Kalam is one of them. That's the reason why we respect Rahu Kalam and not do certain auspicious things during Rahu Kalam, because we recognize that they're asuras, but somehow became devatas, and they play an important role. With that, I want to kind of conclude today's talk on how an important role the Sankalpam plays, and how by doing that we get an important connection to each of these devatas. We respect every single devata, from the Agni that we have from a homam to saying, oh, of this day, this tithi, this month, this year, this ritu, this ayanam, and this kalpam, right? We go up the chain from all the way from the top. We kind of come down and make a connection to the larger cosmos when we are doing even the smallest karma. when we are trying to do even the smallest thing that we do in the morning, truly speaking, each of us, there can never be a better thing to say for me than saying, when we take bath every day in the morning, when we take bath, we are supposed to be thankful that we have the water to be able to take the bath, and the water is what connects us up to the nether worlds. Water is such an important source, so we do sankalpam every day before taking bath. We are supposed to be doing sankalpam. Nowadays, not many people do it, but by doing so, we pay respects to every single devata that makes the day happen, even though we take it for granted. Every single day that we live, and we draw a connection between these different sources, we are ever thankful that we are born on this earth, in this beautiful place. We got to make the best use of what we have, and all for raising up. We got to go up the higher worlds that there are. So with that, I conclude. Jai Shimanarana. Thank you for listening in today.
Thank you very much, Sri Ram. It's so mind-boggling and so much educational it is. I have a habit of looking at a NASA picture every day. I get it in the mail or in my computer each morning. When I see how the Perseverance is looking at sending the pictures of what's happening in Mars. Relating to what you say, Mars is nothing but a Savai Graham. It is what another Graham of Savai, which is from a distance from Earth, is they say is almost close to 300 million miles. And the distance between Earth and the space is a kind of an infinity. Now, we saw the days when a man landed in the moon. So you have the mountains, you have the sands and dust and whatnot in the moon. In fact, I saw in one of the museums, they brought in moon rock and then moon dust.
Right.
You see, now we are yet to get, what is there. In Mars, when I see the pictures, you have the mountains and the traces of deltas are there, and then looks like at one point of time water flowed. And again, when you see the Antarctic and all, where it's all kind of an ice, now ice start melting. What will happen in another 100 years to the Antarctica, how the climate will change again, God only knows. Again, I have got a habit of watching the sun in the morning. You said Uttarayanam. I saw the sun moving from the northeastern side to slowly it is moving towards the south. And then how much it changes the climate, I can see in the spring, my tulips are sprouting out and everything, they were all in a sleeping state on the Dakshinayana period from January, February, March. And suddenly something is happening, all due to these moments, and each one of the planet looks like is a kind of is a spherical 360 degrees. Looks like every degree or half a degree or even a fraction of a degree makes so much change in everything, that I understand. Probably in the moon, in the sun, in the sea, and the thing. As he rightly said, our body is composed of about 70-80% water. So what kind of a change every fraction of a degree can make in our body also. It's because everything is so related, medical science or this or that, so much is in the Vedas. Looks like everything is related, that one, and what we know is only is a katrathu kaiman alavu kalladadu ulagalavu. That is what the proverb is. What we don't know is infinity. We don't know yet,
But we can get to know it.
Thanks a lot. It's so interesting. I can't wait for the next Sunday to come. And thank you and your daughter for the excellent presentation.
Yes, Mara. Thank you.
So long. We'll meet next Sunday then. Thank you.